Pregame.com.
Friday night, ESPN NBA action. Most of the country will be focused on the Sweet 16. But from what I picked up, speaking to bookmakers, these primetime games with NBA action, even with the big dance, they're seeing volume. And more importantly, they're seeing a lot of cross NBA with, big dance parlays and teasers. And what happens is a lot of the later action in NBA, bettors end up having to chase or try to double up with the NBA. So here's a game I think that will attract more action than your normal game for a big dance taking center stage. With that said, Boston at Philly. This one's a big one. We made the line around 4.5 Philly. Personally, my true line has Philly a lot higher than that. But the way they've been playing of late, they've really cooled off. Here's a team that was on fire early on. They left everyone behind them. But now all of a sudden, they're just 1.5 games ahead of the Celtics. And the Celtics, who I was high on a little while back and Brian was laughing at me, all of a sudden, they've heated up. They've heated up just in time. And only 1.5 games back. I think this line's going to come out lower than it should. Because of that, I like the Sixers coming from Philly. I'm trying to be not biased. And I don't think I am because I made my true line closer to 7.5. And I think this is just a bad spot for the Celtics. 8-game road trip that ends in Philadelphia. Philly's going to be home already. They play the Knicks 2 days earlier. They'll be rested, waiting for Boston to come in. And again, this is a big game. And more importantly, Boston's a team that just isn't deep right now. With Wilcox and O'Neal not playing, you're looking at 5 guys, 6 guys tops. I think against a Philly team that does go deep, it's not a good situation for Boston. I like the Sixers.
It's funny you mentioned like Philly and they haven't done real well against winning teams. In fact, I wrote down the stat, 1-12 straight up and against the spread against teams who currently own 500 or better one-loss records. 1-12. And I went against them when they played Miami at home about a week ago or whatever it was, and we cashed the ticket with the Miami Heat, a 6-point win. Also went on the Boston Celtics on Monday night when they played in Atlanta, and Boston had a 13-0 run in the fourth quarter, built a big lead, and then almost blew it, ended up winning 79-76. And it's kind of funny. I look at the NBA a good 4 or 5 days in advance, and I start tracking what teams got to do here, and who's coming off a big game the night before, that kind of stuff. And originally, when I was writing down my stuff, I thought this is going to be a play for me on the Atlanta Hawks. And then as I watched what Boston did against Sacramento and against Denver, getting crushed on the glass especially, I think they gave up 20 second chance points to the Denver Nuggets. I started reading on the Boston Globe and things of that, about the players, the veterans coming out, not really questioning their team's heart, but questioning their team's work ethic. And I saw that going into the Atlanta game, and I thought, wow, this is like their biggest game so far this season almost, is how they fare in their minds against the Atlanta Hawks. And we matched up against Atlanta. Of course, they were a walking mash unit going into that game, talking about the Hawks. And, a couple of their big players for the Atlanta Hawks had struggled against Boston in recent games over the past couple of years. Joe Johnson, he had a rough time against this team, against Boston. So I'm looking at this game, and I thought, okay, we're going to go with Boston. We released it here at pregame. We bet on the Celtics. They win the game. But you're right. This is 8 games in 12 nights for a ragged,
after going west, now they're back east.
And here's a comment that I got that I copied down. It was from Garnett. He says, I don't know why we look like we're running in mud these days. Our fight's there, but we're running in mud. Well, I do know why. Because you're old, you're tired, and you're not deep as far as your bench is concerned.
And guys are playing 40 minutes.
Exactly. And you might say, oh, it's a revenge spot because Philly just blew the doors off. I think it was 103-71 last time they met. But you know what? That just tells me that Philly's going to come in with the confidence knowing if we play our game, we're going to be able to handle this basketball team by a decent enough margin. And I think they will come out because now that game-and-a-half lead as they go into, we're talking on Tuesday, but as they go into that game, probably going to be anywhere from half a game to 2 games up on the Celtics. And the bottom line is they're going to know we've got to bring it. We've still got to bring it against Boston because we got to wrap up this Atlantic division as soon as possible. It's going to be a while, but we cannot forget what we did when we won 103-71. And they've got guys like Haas who's supposed to be back for this game, unless he gets injured between now and then. So I think Philly's in the right position here, although Boston has that huge revenge angle. I still think Philly's the right team in this spot. I like your power rating, by the way, of that 7. I think that's probably a good 7 to 10 point final margin is where Philly ends up winning this game.
Yeah, there's only one thing that scares me with Philly is their free throw shooting.
Sure.
You know, they're 23rd in the league free throw percentage. When you're laying points, that becomes dangerous. Because a team that's up 4 or 5, you want to be able to have them stretch it to 10 by hitting their free throws. That's the only thing that worries me about Philly. But I think the odds makers are going to bring this line lower than it really should be. And let's not forget, this is a primetime ESPN game, and it's big for this team. Celtics, they're on the stage. They've been on that stage for a while now. We always see them on those Sunday NBC games, ABC games, ESPN games. For Philly, I mean, this is a big game, I'm telling you. For Philadelphia, this will be a big game. Having Boston come in on a Friday night on ESPN, they're going to be ready.
Will be jumping.
Yeah, the place will be.
The boys will be there.
Yeah. Well, on the Boston side, I think it's going to be like, let's just get home. You know, I mean, obviously you want to win, but after 8 games on the road where you went to the West Coast,
nights.
You're back on the East Coast, you just want to finally get home. And I think if Sixers bring it early and get ahead, I think it turns ugly like the last time. And you put it perfectly. This Sixers team goes deep. I mean, you look at their starting 5, they're good, but then you go to Williams and Meeks and Young. I don't think that Boston has the answers on their bench.
Right.
And I see Philly turning this into a double-digit win.
I don't like to let previous games prejudice my thinking when it comes to handicapping, but this is big. Philly had a 54-35 rebound advantage over Boston, 16-8 on the offensive boards. And because we've seen Boston not take care of the glass in recent games again, there's nothing that tells me that Boston's going to all of a sudden, you know, maybe not turn that around, but even draw it even closer. I mean, they could trim off, what, 5 or 6 rebounds off of that and still end up -8.
Yeah.
You know, and here's the thing is when they did beat Atlanta the other night, they still were out-rebounded 45-40. So it's a team that is still, it's lethargic. Kevin Garnett recognizes that they're slowing down with their legs. They look like they're running them in the mud, as he said. And so I gotta be with you here. I gotta back Philly. I just think it's too tough of a team for the Celtics to overcome. I know they're going to say all the right things. They're going to be thinking about revenge. We lost, you know, by 32 points to Philly last time we played them. But the bottom line is, I think when it comes down to the players and the depth of the 76ers, as we both said, just going to be too much for an aging Boston team.
I love it. And the rebounding angle is perfect. When you look at the Celtics, they're 30th in the NBA in offensive rebounds. They're 22nd in the NBA defensive rebounds. That's not going to get it done against this Philly team, who is the #1 in defense and points allowed. Everyone talks about how good Boston defense is, Chicago defense is, but the Philly D is #1 in points allowed defensively. Tough team to beat. I like the Sixers here. Scott likes the Sixers here. Let's hope the odds makers are a little generous and send that line out around 4, 4.5. We'll jump all over the 76ers on Friday night. It's going to do it. Don't forget, we did some Sweet 16 videos. Go to pregamevideos.com. All the videos for me, Scott, Brian, Marco, all in one thread. Steve Nover, available with our notes and conversation. Guys, have a great weekend. Enjoy the Sweet 16, the Elite 8. Make some money. Enjoy the games. We'll be back next week.